I am Victoria, 34 years old. And on my very first morning as the Senior Vice President of Cyber Forensics and Risk Mitigation, I found my husband staring back at me from a sleek silver frame on a junior coordinator's desk. I did not scream. I did not sweep her overpriced matcha latte onto the floor. Instead, I calmly picked up the frame, admired the familiar curve of his smile, and asked her who this handsome man was. Her response was so brazen, so saturated with unearned arrogance, that I knew a standard divorce would be an insult to my intelligence. I was going to systematically vaporize their entire existence. Before I detail exactly how I dismantled them, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to smile through your teeth while silently architecting the destruction of a betrayer. My new position at the corporate intelligence firm was the culmination of a decade of grueling dedication. I had clawed my way to the top of the male-dominated cybersecurity sector to earn my corner office. Part of my onboarding involved meeting the junior staff I would be overseeing. That was when I was introduced to Sienna. She was 23 years old, freshly graduated from a mediocre university. Working as a junior public relations coordinator, she wore a designer silk blouse that cost more than her rent and carried herself with an infuriating sense of entitlement. I stepped into her cubicle to introduce myself. We exchanged pleasantries, but my eyes were instantly drawn to the marble desk organizer. Right next to her keyboard sat a framed photograph. It was a picture of a man kissing her cheek against the backdrop of a sprawling vineyard. The man was Julian, my husband of 7 years. My heart slammed against my ribs like a trapped animal, but my face remained an impenetrable mask. I have negotiated the digital recovery of multi-million-dollar ransoms. I know how to hold a poker face. I picked up the frame with perfectly steady hands. He is very handsome, I said, keeping my tone light and conversational. Who is this? Sienna beamed, her eyes sparkling with materialistic triumph. That is my fiancé, Julian, she announced, practically vibrating with excitement. He is an executive director of global logistics at a massive supply chain firm. We are getting married at a private vineyard in Napa Valley this autumn. A fiancé? A destination vineyard wedding. I let the words wash over me, analyzing them as data points rather than emotional daggers. Is that right? I asked, tilting my head. He must be incredibly successful. Oh, he is amazing, Sienna gushed, leaning forward as if sharing a corporate secret. He treats me like absolute royalty. He just paid the 2-year lease on my new luxury penthouse in the financial district. He says his future wife deserves nothing but the finest things all you are. He spoils me completely. He even designed this for me. She thrust her left hand toward me, flashing a massive custom ring. It was a breathtaking 4-carat emerald-cut diamond, catching the harsh fluorescent lights of the office and refracting them into tiny mocking rainbows. I recognized the distinct platinum setting. It was from an exclusive bespoke jeweler in the city, the exact place Julian and I used to window shop when we were young and ambitious. I stared at the diamond, calculating its estimated market value in a fraction of a second, $50,000 minimum. I did not blink. I did not let my breath hitch. I simply smiled a wide, warm, entirely fabricated smile. It is absolutely stunning, Sienna, I told her, my voice as smooth as glass. Congratulations to you both. Napa Valley will be a breathtaking venue. You are a very lucky woman. Thank you so much, Victoria, she said, completely oblivious to the venom coursing through my veins. It is so refreshing to have a boss who supports a healthy work-life balance. I might need a few extra long weekends for wedding planning. I hope that will not be an issue. We will certainly discuss your schedule, I replied pleasantly, Enjoy your morning. Sienna. I set the picture frame back down exactly where I had found it, ensuring the angle was perfectly aligned. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking rhythmically against the polished concrete floor. Each step was measured, each breath was controlled. I walked past the rows of cubicles, past the conference rooms, and straight into my new glass-walled corner office. I closed the heavy door behind me, engaging the lock with a soft, satisfying click. I lowered the electronic privacy blinds, casting the room into a cool, muted shadow. Then, and only then, did I allow myself to drop the smile. I stood in the center of my office, the silence ringing in my ears. Julian, my charming, ambitious husband. For the past 9 months, Julian had been playing the role of the stressed, overburdened logistics executive to absolute perfection. He had come home night after night rubbing his temples, complaining about supply chain bottlenecks and severe economic downturns at his company. He had looked me right in the eyes over our modest dinners and told me we needed to be incredibly financially conservative. Victoria, darling, he had said just last week, holding my hands across the dining table. The global market is highly unstable right now. We really need to tighten our belts. We should cancel our anniversary trip to Europe. We need to funnel everything into our joint investment portfolio to secure our future. I need you to be my partner in this. And I had agreed. I had canceled my personal trainer. I had stopped purchasing luxury goods. I had routed my massive quarterly bonuses directly into our joint accounts, trusting the man I had built my empire with. I had sacrificed my own comforts to alleviate his supposed financial anxiety. Meanwhile, my husband was funding a luxury penthouse, planning a Napa Valley wedding, and dropping $50,000 on a diamond ring for a junior PR coordinator who sat 50 feet away from my desk. The sheer audacity of his deception was breathtaking. It was not just infidelity. It was systematic, calculated financial abuse. He was using my hard-earned wealth, my sacrifices, to fund a lavish double life with a woman a decade, my junior. A lesser woman might have confronted him immediately. A lesser woman might have dissolved into a puddle of tears, called a marriage counselor, or marched back out to Sienna desk to scream at her. But I was not a lesser woman. I was a senior cyber forensics expert specializing in digital asset recovery and corporate espionage. I spent my days uncovering hidden offshore accounts, identifying liabilities, and dismantling corrupt organizations piece by piece. Julian had made a fatal miscalculation. He had treated our marriage like a fraudulent corporation. Assuming the auditor would never look at the server logs, I walked over to my desk and sat down in my ergonomic chair. I booted up my secure workstation and pulled up my personal encrypted financial portal. There would be no screaming matches. There would be no emotional breakdowns. I was going to strip him of his money, his career, his pride, and his freedom. I was going to ruin him so thoroughly that he would never recover. And I was going to start by following the digital money trail. The glowing screen of my monitor felt like a portal into a crime scene. I bypassed the standard consumer banking dashboards and accessed the back-end financial aggregators I used for corporate risk assessment. When you spend your life analyzing digital footprints, you learn that numbers never lie. Husbands lie. Encrypted ledgers do not. I pulled up the primary joint account Julian and I had shared since our wedding day. On the surface, the balance looked exactly as he had reported to me last week. It was lean, justifying his recent demands for extreme frugality, but a surface-level balance is just a facade designed to placate casual observers. I initiated a deep dive export, pulling 24 months of transaction history into a raw datasheet. My fingers flew across the keyboard, applying pivot tables, identifying recurring vendors, and isolating outlier transfers. I was no longer a wife discovering an affair. I was an apex predator hunting financial prey. No tears blurred my vision. My heart rate, which had spiked in Sienna cubicle, settled into a slow, rhythmic drumbeat of absolute focus. I isolated the exact dates. Julian claimed his company was suspending executive bonuses. I cross-referenced those dates with our joint tax filings. He had forged my digital signature on our latest return, obscuring his true income entirely. The meticulous nature of his fraud indicated this was not a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a premeditated, long-term strategy to bleed me dry. I felt a cold, sharp clarity wash over me. For 7 years, I had believed I was building a partnership. Instead, I had been blindly funding a parasite. The first anomaly jumped off the screen within minutes. Every month, precisely 2 days after my direct deposit hit our joint savings account, a transfer of $5,000 was automatically routed out. Julian had categorized these transactions under the label of an independent asset management firm. He had told me this was a high-yield growth fund we could not touch without incurring heavy penalties. He had sold me a lie wrapped in financial jargon he thought I would not verify. I traced the routing hashes. The destination was not a wealth management fund. It was a dummy checking account at a completely different banking institution registered under an obscure limited liability company. A quick search of the state registry revealed the truth. Julian was the sole registered agent of Vanguard Logistics LLC. He had been siphoning off my salary, my bonuses, and my sacrifices, funneling them into a private slush fund. I dug deeper into the dummy account's outflow. The transaction logs read like a diary of infidelity. There were regular wire transfers matching the exact amount of rent for a luxury downtown penthouse. There were payments to high-end florists, boutique spa, and weekend resort getaways. While I was packing my lunches and canceling my vacations to alleviate his supposed stress, Julian was financing a billionaire lifestyle. He had stolen the security I worked 70-hour weeks to build and handed it to a junior coordinator whose biggest daily challenge was drafting a press release. I mapped out the flow of the embezzled cash, creating a digital evidence trail that even the most incompetent lawyer could follow. The dummy LLC was registered to a post office box just 3 blocks from his office. He had used it to pay for premium event tickets, weekly luxury meal delivery services, and high-end private car services for Sienna. Every time she had bragged to the office about her wealthy executive fiancé sending a black car to pick her up, my bank account had taken the hit. The sheer volume of the theft was staggering. He had drained nearly $90,000 in cash alone over the past year. But the embezzled cash was only the first layer of his deception, emboldened by his success. Julian had grown greedy. I ran a comprehensive soft pull on my own social security number, a standard identity verification check. The credit report populated on my screen, revealing a jagged, terrifying spike in my debt-to-income ratio. There, sitting quietly under a mountain of active trade lines, was a black card I had never applied for. The account had been opened 9 months ago, right around the time Julian claimed his logistics firm was facing massive budget cuts. He had used my stellar credit score, my impeccable financial history, and my personal information to secure a limit of $150,000. He had committed identity theft against his own wife. I accessed the statements for the fraudulent card. The itemized charges were a grotesque display of his desperation to impress Sienna. The billing history was littered with luxury brand names. A $6,000 charge at a French fashion house, $3,000 at an Italian shoe boutique, expensive dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants where a single bottle of wine cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I scrolled through the statements. My jaw clenched so tightly my teeth ached. Then I found it. the crowning jewel of his betrayal. The charge had posted exactly 3 weeks ago. It was a single transaction for $50,000 at the exact bespoke jeweler Sienna had mentioned. He had bought her engagement ring using a credit card opened in my name. I was literally paying for the diamond currently sitting on my coworker's left hand. The $50,000 charge stared back at me, a glaring testament to his absolute lack of a moral compass. He had maxed out the fraudulent credit card to 90% of its limit. If I had not discovered this today, the mounting interest and inevitable default would have decimated my credit score, potentially jeopardizing my career in the cybersecurity sector, where clean background checks are federally mandated. Julian was not just cheating on me. He was actively destroying my professional future to finance his fantasy. I downloaded every statement, every transaction log, every fraudulent digital signature. I organized the data into encrypted, password-protected folders on a secure external drive. I categorized the evidence with the same ruthless efficiency I applied to corporate hackers. By the time I finished compiling the financial dossier, my initial shock had fully transmuted into a lethal, quiet power. Julian thought he was the smartest person in the room. He thought his logistics background made him invincible. He had forgotten that he married a woman whose entire career was built on finding the data that greedy men try to hide. I leaned back in my leather chair, the glow of the monitor casting harsh shadows across my office. The digital trail of breadcrumbs he left behind was almost insultingly amateurish. He had linked the fraudulent credit card to his personal email address, the same one he left logged in on our home network. He had used our shared IP address to authorize the massive transfers to his dummy LLC. In his arrogance, he believed his deception was foolproof. He had underestimated my intelligence, my resources, and my capacity for vengeance. I was not going to confront him with tears and accusations. I was not going to ask for a divorce and settle for half of what was rightfully mine. I was going to let him continue his pathetic performance. Let him believe he was a master manipulator, while I quietly arranged the pieces on the board for his absolute destruction. The silent audit was complete. The evidence was secured. The trap was about to be set, but my instincts, honed by years of forensic accounting, told me I was not finished. Embezzlement and credit card fraud were desperate. Sloppy moves. But Julian was arrogant. Arrogant men always leverage their biggest assets first. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the County Clerk Public Property Records database. We owned a beautiful boutique commercial property in the Arts District, a space I had purchased years ago using my early stock options. It was a highly lucrative asset. I typed the property address into the search bar, expecting to see nothing more than the standard commercial deed. The query loaded. A secondary commercial lien appeared on the screen. Filed just 6 months ago. I clicked on the digitized document, my eyes scanning the heavily redacted public preview before pulling the full unredacted file through a premium legal database. There it was. A commercial line of credit fully drawn out for $200,000. The lender was a predatory secondary market firm known for fast approvals, minimal oversight, and exorbitant interest rates. I scrolled down to the signature page. Julian's signature was there. Right beneath it, sitting on the line designated for the co-owner, was my name. The signature was a decent forgery, mimicking the loops of my handwriting, but the digital timestamp and IP verification were entirely wrong. I stared at my forged name. A physical manifestation of his ultimate betrayal. He had leveraged my commercial property without my knowledge. A forged signature on a commercial document requires a complicit or negligent notary public. I checked the notary stamp next to our signatures. The name belonged to a junior compliance officer at Julian Logistics firm. He had likely intimidated or bribed a subordinate into stamping a binding legal document without my physical presence. Julian had committed commercial mortgage fraud. a serious state and federal offense. If he defaulted on this predatory loan, the bank could initiate foreclosure proceedings on my property. He had placed my physical asset, the property I paid to maintain, on the chopping block to fund his delusions of grandeur. I needed to trace the exact movement of that $200,000 lump sum. I reopened the spreadsheet containing the scraped data from his dummy LLC account. I scrolled back exactly 6 months in the transaction ledger. On the exact date the loan funds were dispersed. A wire transfer of $195,000 hit his secret checking account. 2 days later, a massive outbound transfer was initiated. The payee was a luxury property management group in the financial district. I cross-referenced the payee with the building address Sienna had flaunted on her social media a few weeks ago. Julian had not just paid her rent. He had prepaid a 2-year lease on a multi-million-dollar penthouse using the stolen equity from my commercial property. The sheer audacity of the math settled over me like a heavy, suffocating blanket. My early mornings, my late nights, my canceled vacations, and my strict budgeting had built the equity in that property. Julian had extracted that equity, forged my legal consent, and handed it to a junior PR coordinator so she could play house in a high-rise. Every time I had paid the property taxes from my salary, I had been maintaining the collateral for his infidelity. He had mortgaged my past and my present to finance her future. I closed my laptop and stood up. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office and looked out over the bustling city below. 10 minutes ago, a microscopic fraction of my heart might have still harbored a lingering sadness for the death of my marriage. But looking at that forged commercial document killed that woman completely. In her place, a cold, calculating machine powered up. The goal was no longer saving the marriage. The goal was not even a clean, amicable divorce. You do not divide assets fairly with a thief. You do not negotiate with a man who forges your signature to steal your commercial property. The objective was absolute financial and legal annihilation. I wanted to see him stripped of his corporate title, his ill-gotten wealth, and his freedom. I wanted to watch Sienna realize that the golden goose she had hooked was actually a financial black hole that would drag her down with him. Anger is a messy, chaotic emotion that makes people sloppy. I refused to be sloppy. I took a slow, deep breath, regulating my heart rate back to a steady operational rhythm. Julian had built his entire scheme on the assumption that I was a docile, trusting wife who would blindly follow his financial directives. He relied on my compliance to maintain his double life. I was going to give him exactly what he expected. I would be the perfect, loving, frugal partner. I would smile at him over dinner. I would ask him how his stressful days at the office went. I would feed his narcissism until he was so bloated with false confidence that he would never see the executioner standing right behind him. To execute this level of destruction, I needed more than just spreadsheets. I needed legal weaponry. I needed to ensure that when the hammer fell, he could not hide behind bankruptcy or transfer the debt back to me. I needed to lock down the deed to the property, sever the fraudulent credit lines, and isolate his corporate embezzlement so it rested solely on his shoulders. But most importantly, I had to let him believe he was still winning. The longer he operated under the illusion of control, the deeper he would dig his own grave. I walked back to my desk, picked up my phone, and composed a sweet, encouraging text message to my husband, asking what he wanted for dinner and telling him how much I appreciated his hard work. The war had officially begun, and my first weapon was absolute silence. The drive home was a masterclass in psychological compartmentalization. Pulling into the driveway of our home, my armor was fully assembled. I turned my key in the lock and pushed open the heavy front door. The house smelled of roasted garlic and expensive cologne, a crafted domestic illusion. Julian was in the kitchen with the sleeves of his tailored shirt rolled up, chopping vegetables. He looked up, flashing that boyish smile that once convinced me he was safe. Now looking at him, I only saw a walking liability. He wiped his hands and crossed the kitchen to greet me. He kissed my forehead mechanically, stepping behind me. He began massaging my shoulders. "You feel like a coiled spring." "Victoria," he murmured. First day taking a toll already. I forced my muscles to relax, suppressing the urge to shove him. Just a lot of data to audit. I replied mildly, "How was your day?" Julian let out a theatrical sigh. Leaning against the counter, he rubbed his eyes, playing the exhausted husband to perfection. "Grueling," he said with fabricated fatigue. "The logistics sector is taking a massive hit. We had 3 emergency board meetings to discuss vendor cuts. My supply chain projects are bleeding capital. And the CEO is breathing down my neck. It is a nightmare." "Victoria, I am just trying to keep my head above water to provide for us." I poured a glass of water. Watching him, he was complaining about vendor cuts while actively embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars from those same supply chains. He was crying about keeping his head above water while drowning me in secondary commercial debt to fund a luxury penthouse. "I am so sorry." "Julian," I said gently, "you work so hard for us. I have already canceled my personal trainer and adjusted our grocery budget to give us breathing room." He smiled a tragic smile. "You are amazing." "Victoria, I do not know what I would do without you." At the dining table, the conversation shifted. Julian cleared his throat. "Victoria, about our financial timeline." He started, brow furrowed in faux distress. "Between my company cutting bonuses and market instability, I am incredibly stressed about our liquidity." He reached across the table and took my hand. I stared at our tightly intertwined fingers, actively fighting the overwhelming physical urge to rip my hand away. "We need to delay our plans to renovate the house," he said, voice dripping with sorrow. "Putting money into renovations during this financial stress would not be responsible. I want to give us the perfect home. And right now I can barely guarantee my job security. We need to wait another year until I build our safety net back up." The psychological violence of his gaslighting was astounding. He was looking me right in the eye without a single ounce of shame. He was weaponizing financial responsibility to disguise his reckless theft. I nodded slowly, squeezing his hand. "You are right. Julian, it breaks my heart. But we need to be smart. Financial security comes first. We will wait. Thank you for understanding," he whispered. He thought he had successfully managed my expectations. As I cleared our plates, Julian casually dropped the final piece of the evening performance. "By the way," he said, "the CEO just mandated an emergency offsite for the executive team this weekend. We have to fly out to a corporate retreat center in Napa Valley to restructure third-quarter logistics goals. It is going to be brutal. Just back-to-back strategy sessions." I stopped dead at the kitchen sink, the loud rush of running water masking the cold laugh threatening to escape my throat. An emergency corporate retreat in Napa Valley. Of course, Sienna had mentioned needing extra time off for wedding planning. Julian was orchestrating a romantic weekend getaway paid for entirely by my labor and his embezzlement. "That sounds exhausting," I said, drying my hands. "Do you leave Friday morning?" "Thursday night." "Actually," he replied, "I need to hit the ground running on Friday. I hate leaving you alone for the weekend, especially when you were looking forward to us relaxing together. Do not worry about me." I told him, "You just focus on fixing things at work. Let me pack your suitcase for you tonight. You have enough on your plate." Julian smiled with narcissistic satisfaction. You are the best wife a guy could ask for. Victoria. I followed him upstairs. While Julian took a shower, I pulled his leather weekender bag from the closet. I began methodically selecting his clothes. With every item I placed into the bag, I was cataloging his lies. I packed his designer cologne, purchased with my stolen equity. I packed his silk ties, funded by his corporate fraud. Zipping the suitcase closed, I listened to the running shower. Julian was washing away the stress of a hard day. Completely oblivious to his reality, he believed he was leaving his sweet, naive wife at home while he jetted off to play a high-rolling executive. He had no idea that when he walked out the door on Thursday night, he was stepping into an intricate, inescapable snare. Thursday morning arrived with the sterile yapizon, artificial hum of the corporate HVAC system. I stepped off the elevator and walked onto the executive floor, clutching a black coffee and a meticulously drafted agenda. Julian had packed his bags the night before, kissing me goodbye at dawn for his fabricated executive retreat. He was currently en route to a luxury resort, eagerly awaiting his mistress. I, however, was about to ensure she never made it to the airport. As a senior vice president, my authority over the PR department's integration metrics gave me unilateral control over junior staff allocations. I sat at my desk and pulled up Sienna employee file. Her timesheets were a joke. She had been taking extended lunches and requesting arbitrary Fridays off. I drafted a highly formal, impeccably polite email to the Human Resources Department, noting that due to the sensitive nature of upcoming cybersecurity audits, all PR coordinators with access to internal communications were immediately placed on a strict compliance schedule. No remote work, no flex hours. Standard corporate operating hours were to be rigidly enforced. It was a flawless, legally bulletproof directive that HR instantly approved at precisely 10 in the morning. I summoned Sienna to my office. She strutted in wearing a pale pink designer skirt suit that I recognized from the fraudulent credit card statements. She clutched a sleek tablet, looking bored. "Have a seat, Sienna," I said, gesturing to the leather chair opposite my desk. I kept my voice incredibly soft, exuding nothing but professional warmth. "As you know, our latest cybersecurity audit is entering a critical period. I have reviewed the PR data you submitted last week." She shifted in her chair, crossing her legs. "Is there a problem?" "Victoria, I used the standard templates. The templates are fine," I replied smoothly. "However, the data integrity is lacking. We are facing a comprehensive federal compliance audit. I need the last 5 years of legacy PR expenditures cross-referenced with the new corporate acquisition targets. Every vendor, every invoice needs to be manually verified and re-entered into the new secure server." Sienna stared at me, her manicured fingernails tapping against her tablet. "That sounds like massive data entry. Can I just run a script to port it over?" I smiled sympathetically. "Unfortunately, the legacy systems are incompatible with our current security architecture. It has to be done manually, line by line, from your desktop terminal here in the building. Security protocols forbid remote access." She frowned, clearly calculating how this would impact her schedule. "Okay, I can start on Monday. I actually put in a request to leave at noon today. My fiancé has a huge corporate event this weekend, and we are flying out early to Napa." I leaned forward, folding my hands on my desk. "I am so sorry, Sienna. The board requires this compliance report by Friday evening at 7 sharp. If we fail to deliver, the entire timeline is compromised. I am afraid all personal time off requests for junior staff have been temporarily frozen by HR. I forwarded you the memo this morning. The color drained from her face. She blinked, her arrogant facade cracking. Friday at 7. But that is impossible. It is Thursday morning. I have non-refundable flight tickets. My fiancé is an executive director. I cannot just ditch his corporate retreat to do data entry. I widened my eyes in feigned empathy. I completely understand how frustrating this is. Corporate life demands so many sacrifices. However, this is a non-negotiable directive. If the data is not fully reconciled by Friday evening, I will have to inform the executive board that the PR department failed their compliance audit. That would trigger immediate termination protocols for the responsible staff. I know you value your career here. Sienna, I would hate to see you lose it over a weekend trip. She opened her mouth to argue, but the trap was perfectly constructed. There was no HR loophole. She was cornered by her own job description. The silent rage in her eyes was intoxicating. She practically snatched the physical briefing folder from my desk and marched out of my office. I watched through the glass walls as she stormed back to her cubicle. She aggressively threw her designer bag onto her desk and snatched up her phone. I knew exactly who she was calling. Across the state, Julian was undoubtedly checking into his luxury suite, pouring a glass of champagne, only to receive a hysterical phone call from his mistress, explaining that her evil new boss was forcing her to work through the weekend. He would have to spend the next 2 days trapped in a resort alone, pacing the floors and trying to soothe a furious 23-year-old. The romantic getaway I had unwittingly financed was officially ruined. By Friday afternoon, the atmosphere on the PR floor was incredibly tense. I walked out of my office to grab a coffee, moving silently across the carpeted floors. As I approached the break room, I heard voices echoing from inside. Sienna was standing by the espresso machine, furiously venting to 2 other junior coordinators. She is a complete psychopath, Sienna hissed aggressively, stirring her coffee. I swear she sits in that glass office just inventing ways to torture us. She is just a bitter, workaholic older woman who probably has a miserable life at home. She is taking her sad, empty marriage out on me. One of the other coordinators murmured sympathetically, "It is beyond unfair." Sienna snapped. My fiancé is furious. He is sitting in a 5-star vineyard resort right now, dealing with high-level logistics executives. And I am stuck here looking at spreadsheets. Julian says women like Victoria are the worst type of corporate climbers. They have no romance. So they try to destroy anyone who actually has a wealthy man taking care of them. I bet her husband is a complete loser. I stood in the hallway, letting her toxic words wash over me. She was calling me a miserable witch. She was bragging about her wealthy fiancé. She was completely oblivious to the fact that the miserable witch standing outside the break room was the very woman paying for her designer clothes, her apartment, and the engagement ring she was currently flashing to her coworkers. The sheer blinding irony of her arrogance was magnificent. I took a sip of my coffee, turning around and walking silently back to my office. I glanced at the clock. It was 5 in the afternoon. Sienna had 2 more hours of agonizing data entry ahead of her, while Julian stewed in a hotel room I had effectively placed him in. I sat at my desk and pulled up the real-time corporate audit logs. I watched Sienna user ID frantically punching data into the system, trapped in the invisible cage I had built for her. The weekend arrived with quiet predictability. Sunday morning meant a mandatory brunch with my in-laws, Eleanor and Richard. With Julian supposedly away on his executive retreat, I was expected to fulfill my duties as the devoted wife and present myself at their sprawling equestrian estate in the affluent northern suburbs. I selected a tailored dress, pulled my hair back into a sleek knot, and drove toward the Lion's Den. Eleanor and Richard lived in a massive stone manor, surrounded by horse pastures that screamed of old money pedigree. From the moment I married Julian, they had made it abundantly clear that I was an unwelcome infiltration of their pristine bloodline. I possessed a corporate work ethic that offended their delicate sensibilities. They viewed my career not as an accomplishment, but as an aggressive trait, detracting from my duty to their son. I parked in their circular driveway and approached the heavy oak front door. Eleanor answered before I could ring the bell. Holding a crystal glass of mimosa, she wore a cashmere sweater and a smile that lacked genuine warmth. Victoria. Eleanor Saihu. Scanning my outfit with a critical eye. You are exactly on time. Come in. Richard is on the veranda. Thank you for having me. Eleanor. I replied evenly. Stepping into the grand foyer, the veranda overlooked the pristine horse pastures. Set with fine china and polished silver, Richard sat at the head of the wrought iron table. Nursing a scotch, he offered a tight nod as I took my seat. Shame Julian could not be here, Richard remarked. Cutting into his meal, the boy is working himself to the bone for that company. Executive retreats demand complete dedication. He is incredibly dedicated. I agreed. Slicing my food with surgical precision, Eleanor took a delicate sip of her mimosa, eyes fixed on me like a hawk. Well, someone has to secure the future of your household. Julian has always been burdened with an immense sense of responsibility. It takes a heavy toll on a man. A toll that a wife ought to alleviate rather than compound. We were speaking with the Huntingtons at the equestrian club yesterday. Eleanor continued, her tone sharpening. Their daughter just retired from her law firm to focus on her family. It was a beautiful reminder of what truly matters. I must admit, Victoria, it is deeply concerning to watch you prioritize climbing some imaginary corporate ladder while my son's legacy is put on hold. Richard pointed his silver fork at me. Your mother-in-law is right. It is a blue-collar mentality. Victoria, this obsession with stockpiling wages, Julian does not need a second breadwinner. He needs a traditional foundation. They sat there radiating elitist judgment, waiting for my reaction. Tonight, I gave them absolutely nothing. I looked at Eleanor in her cashmere, and Richard puffed up with patriarchal authority. I thought about the commercial lien Julian had taken out on my property. I thought about the dummy LLC and the massive credit card debt. They were lecturing me about legacy, blind to the fact that their son was a common thief. My silence stretched across the veranda, thick and impenetrable. I did not frown. I did not flinch. I let their toxic insults hang in the air until the sheer weight of my lack of response made them visibly uncomfortable. I appreciate your perspective, I finally said, my voice smooth and reflective as a frozen lake. You both have given me a great deal to think about regarding Julian's future. As the plates were cleared, Eleanor requested the contact information for a caterer I had used the previous summer. I offered to write it down for her, politely excusing myself to fetch a pen from Richard's study down the hall. I walked through the silent corridor of their sprawling estate. Richard's study was a shrine to his inflated ego. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, filled with leather-bound books and framed photographs of his prize-winning horses. I approached his massive desk and pulled open the top drawer. I reached for a pen, but my hand brushed against a thick manila folder tucked awkwardly beneath a leather portfolio. My forensic intuition flared to life. I slid the folder out and flipped it open. The first page was a glossy, high-resolution brochure for an exclusive private vineyard and luxury event company in Napa Valley. I flipped to the second page. It was a finalized, signed contract for a massive estate rental, complete with a premium catering package, a live orchestra, and a professional photography crew. The total estimated cost was staggering. My eyes darted to the top left corner of the invoice. The primary contact and financial guarantor listed on the contract was Eleanor. I stared at the name. My pulse quickening. I flipped to the next page, which outlined the specific event details. The header of the itinerary document read, "A new chapter celebrating Julian and Sienna." The breath hitched in my throat, freezing in my lungs. It was not a business trip. It was a fully funded, elaborately orchestrated engagement celebration disguised as an executive retreat. And my mother-in-law was the one footing the bill. The sheer magnitude of the conspiracy was paralyzing. This was not a solo operation conducted by a cheating husband. The entire family was complicit. Eleanor and Richard knew everything. They had met Sienna. They had embraced the 23-year-old junior coordinator as the future of their family legacy. All while I was still legally married to their son. I gripped the edge of the desk, grounding myself against the physical shockwave. They were setting me up to be discarded and bankrupted while they celebrated at a vineyard in Napa Valley. My hands stopped shaking. The initial shock evaporated, replaced by a surge of pure, unadulterated venom. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the camera application, moving with rapid, mechanical precision. I photographed every single page in the folder. I captured the vineyard rental agreement, the catering menus, the guest list containing the names of their wealthy friends, and the credit card authorization form signed by Eleanor. Once the digital copies were secured in my encrypted cloud storage, I carefully reassembled the folder. I slid it back into the drawer, positioning it exactly as I had found it. I grabbed the pen, wrote down the caterer's phone number, and closed the drawer. The soft thud of the wood sliding shut sounded like a gavel falling in a courtroom. The verdict had been reached. I walked back down the corridor, my posture immaculate. The rage inside me was liquid nitrogen. When I re-entered the veranda, Eleanor was taking a delicate sip of her drink. "Here is the contact information for the caterer." "Eleanor," I said, handing her the slip of paper. My voice was a flawless symphony of polite obedience. "Thank you, Victoria," she murmured. I sat back down at the table and folded my hands in my lap. I looked at the two of them. These architects of my intended destruction. They wanted to play corporate warfare with my life. They had absolutely no idea that I was already rewriting the deeds to their destruction. I smiled at Eleanor. A warm, terrifyingly genuine smile, knowing that within a matter of weeks, I would own the very ground she stood on. Needing to clear my lungs, I excused myself. Stepping off the veranda and walking toward the manicured gardens, standing near the edge of a stone fountain, smoking a cigar, was David. David was a brilliant corporate litigator who had married Julian's sister. As an outsider who had earned his success through grueling intellect, he and I shared a silent kinship. We were the ones who actually worked for our wealth. He turned as I approached, the glowing tip of his cigar flaring in the sunlight. "You survived another brunch," David said, his voice a low, resonant baritone. I walked over to the fountain. They seemed very concerned about Julian's future. I noted. David let out a slow, humorless chuckle. They are concerned about an image. The actual substance of that image has never mattered to them. David looked at me, his expression entirely focused. He took a slow drag of his cigar. "Victoria," he began, shedding all conversational pleasantries, "you and I have always respected each other. We work in cutthroat industries. We both know this family operates on a very ruthless set of rules." I kept my expression neutral, meeting his intense gaze. "What are you trying to tell me?" "David," he stepped slightly closer, "I am a lawyer. I am bound by privilege when someone officially retains my services. But a man walking into my office unannounced, trying to leverage a family connection for free. Highly unethical advice does not fall under client-attorney privilege. It falls under absolute disrespect. Julian came to my firm yesterday, David said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. He asked me to review a drafted post-nuptial agreement, an aggressively structured document focused entirely on asset shielding and liability transfer. He wanted to know the fastest 8RD.F, most airtight method to isolate his new corporate entities from marital property laws. The breath caught in my throat. Julian was trying to build a financial firewall to protect the money he had stolen from me, ensuring I would absorb the commercial lien while he walked away clean. I read the first page. David continued, his jaw tightening with disgust. The terms were draconian. It was designed to completely blindside you. It included clauses that would force you to assume the burden of secondary commercial loans while granting him full immunity. I threw the document back across my desk and told him to get out of my office. I told him I do not facilitate fraud. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second, absorbing the magnitude of David's integrity. In a family composed entirely of parasites, this man had chosen morality. Thank you, David, I said, my voice steady. You have no idea what telling me this means. I have an idea, David replied grimly. A man does not rush a post-nuptial asset shield unless he is preparing to detonate his marriage and run. His timeline is accelerating, whatever he is planning. He wants it legally locked down by the end of the month. The Napa Valley trip was scheduled for the second week of next month. Protect yourself, Victoria, David said softly. Do not wait for him to initiate the conversation. You strike first. And you strike hard. I am already steps ahead of him, I said quietly. Allowing a sliver of the apex predator to show in my eyes, David studied my face for a long moment. A slow, respectful nod of comprehension passed between us. Give them hell, Victoria. Monday morning arrived with blinding clarity. I did not go to my office. I redirected my driver to the financial district. I stepped out of the black car in front of a sleek, imposing skyscraper. I took the private elevator up to the top floor. I was not there to consult a traditional family lawyer. I was there to meet Arthur. Arthur was a ghost in the legal community, a man whose clientele consisted entirely of high-net-worth individuals seeking absolute, surgical destruction of their spouses. I walked into his minimalist office and placed a single encrypted titanium flash drive on his desk. Arthur was a man in his late 50s, sharp-featured with eyes that possessed the cold calculation of an actuary. He reviewed the dummy LLC, the forged commercial lien, the fraudulent credit card, and the mounting evidence of federal corporate embezzlement. You have effectively done the job of an entire forensic accounting department over a single weekend, Arthur said, leaning back. This is not just a divorce case, Victoria. This is a multi-tiered federal fraud investigation. If we present this to a judge today, your husband will leave the courthouse in handcuffs. That is the eventual goal, I replied, but I cannot pull the trigger yet. David warned me last night that Julian is actively seeking a post-nuptial agreement to shield his assets. He wants to saddle me with the fraudulent commercial lien and walk away clean. If I alert him now, he will panic and attempt to destroy the corporate embezzlement trail. Arthur nodded slowly, a predatory smile touching the corners of his mouth. David is a smart man. If you file for divorce today, an automatic financial freeze goes into effect. Jason would immediately be notified, giving him a critical window to burn his hard drives and potentially frame you for the mortgage fraud. Since your signature is already on the deed, we cannot let him know he is being hunted. What is our immediate strategy? I asked. We play dead, Arthur instructed, You remain the supportive, oblivious wife. Behind the scenes, my team will begin the quiet, meticulous process of untangling this fraudulent commercial lien. We will hire a private handwriting analyst to certify the forgery of your signature. We shield your clean wealth first. Then we let him continue committing his crimes. Every dollar he embezzles from his corporate supply chains to fund his mistress adds another month to his federal prison sentence. To monitor that ongoing liability, I needed eyes on the ground. Arthur pressed a button on his desk console. A side door opened, and a man stepped into the room. He was remarkably unremarkable. Medium build, dressed in unassuming neutral tones. This is Vance. Arthur introduced. He is the best private investigator in the state. He specializes in corporate espionage and high asset tracking. He is going to be your shadow. Vance took a seat. Opening a digital tablet, I handed Vance a secondary file containing everything I knew about Sienna, the make and model of her leased car, and the exact itinerary of the Napa Valley Vineyard Gala. I want a complete catalog of their movements. I told Vance, I want photographic evidence of every expensive dinner, every cash drop. I want high-resolution images of the $50,000 emerald ring on her finger. Consider it done, Vance replied, with the surveillance dossier growing thicker by the day. I knew the explosion would only be satisfying if I was safely standing behind blast glass. It was time to become a financial ghost. My career in cyber forensics was built on the art of digital asset relocation. I started with my independent tech stock portfolios and cryptocurrency holdings. Under normal circumstances, liquidating these accounts all at once would trigger a cascade of automated fraud alerts. I executed the liquidations using a method known as ladder divestment. Over the course of 12 days, I systematically sold off my tech stocks and crypto assets in carefully calculated, staggered increments. I timed the sales to coincide with regular market fluctuations, burying my personal liquidations within the ambient noise of a volatile trading week. I paid the capital gains taxes immediately, leaving zero loose ends. I scheduled a highly encrypted video conference with Arthur to finalize the ultimate defensive maneuver. Together, we established an offshore anonymous blind trust located in the Cayman Islands, a jurisdiction completely hostile to domestic civil subpoenas. I legally transferred the ownership of my liquidated millions to a corporate entity governed by strict non-disclosure laws. On paper, Victoria, the wife, no longer possessed a massive stock portfolio or significant cash reserves. The newly created entity was the actual owner of the wealth. Executing the final transfers was a masterclass in controlled adrenaline. I initiated the wire transfers, meticulously funneling my entire net worth through a series of intermediary clearinghouses that stripped the identifying metadata. By the time I completed the final wire, my domestic portfolio balance read zero. I had legally and permanently stripped him of any access to my genuine wealth. It was time to examine the intelligence Vance had gathered. My private investigator returned with a heavily encrypted drive containing the digital shadow of Julian's entire corporate existence. Julian, in his infinite arrogance, had assumed that his position as an executive director of logistics granted him immunity from routine oversight. I opened the primary ledger detailing the vendor funds Julian was responsible for managing. Every quarter, Julian was authorizing significant disbursements to a vendor listed as Zenith Solutions. The disbursements were categorized as strategic supply chain routing fees. Over the past 18 months, Julian had routed nearly $750,000 to this single entity. I ran a background check. The company was a ghost, a shell company registered in Delaware. The money flowing into Zenith Solutions did not stay there. It was immediately transferred out. broken down into smaller structured payments via smurfing to avoid triggering federal reporting requirements. I followed the fragmented funds as they bounced through intermediary accounts, tracing the digital breadcrumbs until they finally converged on a single destination. The destination was a private banking account registered under the name Sienna. The sheer audacity of the crime was almost incomprehensible. Julian was actively embezzling $750,000 from his employer's supply chain budget and funneling it directly into his mistress' bank account. He was treating a massive logistics firm like his own personal piggy bank. I needed to secure this evidence in a way that was irrefutable. I cross-referenced the fraudulent invoices from Zenith Solutions with Julian internal email communications. I highlighted the dates, the amounts, and the corresponding deposits into Sienna account. I created a master file, an undeniable, legally binding narrative of corporate theft. This was a federal indictment waiting to happen. Julian was going to trade his tailored suits for a prison uniform. I just needed one more piece of the puzzle. I walked back onto the PR floor, my heels clicking with a measured, deliberate rhythm. Sienna was sitting in her cubicle, typing furiously. "You requested to see me." "Victoria?" Sienna asked, her tone devoid of arrogance. "I did?" "Sienna," I replied smoothly. "Please step into my office. We need to review the preliminary results of the compliance audit." She took the seat opposite my desk. I opened a pristine white folder. "I have been reviewing the public relations expenditure reports you submitted for the past 3 quarters. I began. There seemed to be several significant anomalies regarding the influencer outreach budget. Sienna stiffened. "Anomalies. I followed the standard procurement protocols." "I am sure you did." I agreed. However, when we cross-referenced the vendor payouts with the actual campaign deliverables, the numbers failed to reconcile. I slid a specific invoice across the desk. It was a billing statement charging our company $15,000 for a localized social media campaign. "This invoice, for example," I said, "the PR firm listed here does not exist. It is a registered shell company. Furthermore, the banking routing hashes associated with this vendor match the personal checking account you have on file with our payroll department." The color drained from Sienna's face so rapidly, she looked translucent. She stared at the physical proof of her corporate theft laid bare on my desk. She had been creating fake vendor invoices, funneling company PR budgets directly into her personal bank account. "Victoria, I can explain," she stammered, panic finally bleeding into her voice. "It was a mistake. I outsourced the work to a freelancer." I raised a single eyebrow. "You embezzled $15,000 to expedite a payment. That is a very creative defense." "Sienna? I wonder how the legal department will interpret it when they review the other fake invoices I uncovered." I slid a second document across the desk. It detailed every fraudulent transaction she had authorized. The total amount stolen from the company was exactly $50,000. The exact amount Julian had spent on her emerald engagement ring. "What are you going to do?" she whispered, her arrogant facade completely shattered. "Are you going to fire me?" "If I fire you right now, Sienna, human resources will be required to notify local law enforcement. Embezzling $50,000 is a felony. Your career would be over." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, Victoria, do not call the police. I will pay it back." I knew exactly where she intended to get the money. She would run straight to Julian, forcing him to embezzle even more funds, accelerating his own destruction. "I am not going to fire you today, Sienna," I said, my voice dropping to a low, authoritative register. "I am going to freeze your access to all financial procurement systems. You will remain employed here. but you will have zero authorization to approve a single expense. If I terminate you now, it will trigger a massive internal investigation that will delay our cybersecurity audit. I need you sitting at your desk, completing the manual data entry. Thank you. Victoria. She sobbed genuinely, believing I was doing her a favor. She had absolutely no idea that she was walking straight into an ambush. I had essentially placed her in a digital holding cell, keeping her employed just long enough to serve her ultimate purpose. I needed Sienna at that vineyard gala. It was time to turn my attention to Eleanor and Richard. I booted up my encrypted terminal and accessed the county public records database once more. I needed to understand the full scope of my in-laws' financial exposure. Eleanor and Richard lived in an imposing equestrian estate, boasting about their old money pedigree. But ostentatious wealth is often built on a foundation of leveraged debt. The initial query confirmed my suspicions. They had recently filed a secondary deed of trust against the estate. The lender was a private boutique commercial lending firm that specialized in high-risk, short-term mezzanine loans with exorbitant interest rates. I scrutinized the loan origination documents. The principal amount was $400,000. The stated purpose of the loan, signed and sworn to by Richard, was listed as seed capital for Julian New Logistics startup venture. The sheer arrogant stupidity of it was almost comical. Julian had convinced his parents to leverage their entire estate to fund a non-existent startup. In reality, that $400,000 was the operational budget for his new life with Sienna. Eleanor and Richard had willingly placed their home on the chopping block to finance my replacement. If they failed to meet the repayment terms, the private lender had the legal authority to immediately foreclose on the property. I picked up my secure phone and dialed Arthur. Arthur, I said, I need you to contact the commercial lending firm holding the secondary deed on my in-laws' equestrian estate. I want my anonymous offshore trust to buy their debt portfolio. I want to hold the deed to their house. That is a highly aggressive maneuver, Arthur noted, his voice practically purring with professional satisfaction. Offer them the principal plus a premium, I instructed. Ensure the transfer of the deed is executed quietly and immediately. Over the next 48 hours, Arthur's team executed a flawless, aggressive acquisition of Eleanor and Richard debt. The offshore trust I controlled absorbed the $400,000 liability, along with the collateral deed to the equestrian estate. On paper, an anonymous international holding company now owned my in-laws' debt. In reality, I owned them. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a text message from Julian. Hey Victoria. The CEO just finalized the itinerary for the executive retreat this weekend in Napa Valley. It is going to be non-stop strategy sessions. I will probably be offline most of the time. Love you. I stared at the screen. A cold, predatory smile touching my lips. The executive retreat. The fabricated corporate event that was actually his engagement gala. He thought he was leaving me at home, oblivious and compliant. I typed my reply. I completely understand. Julian, you focus on your work. I will find a way to keep myself entertained this weekend. Love you. 2. Friday morning. Julian kissed me goodbye, hauling his leather weekender bag out to his waiting black car. As soon as his car turned the corner, I picked up my phone and called Arthur. Arthur, we are a go for tonight. I said, are the legal documents finalized? The embezzlement dossier has been delivered to his CEO private residence via courier. Arthur confirmed. The termination papers for Sienna are drafted as a D. The foreclosure notice for Eleanor and Richard is in my briefcase. I have also alerted a contact at the federal prosecutor's office regarding the corporate theft. Excellent. I replied, I will see you at the vineyard. I spent the afternoon transforming myself. I had used my offshore funds to purchase a custom-tailored crimson designer gown. It was a weapon made of silk, cut to perfection, commanding attention the moment you laid eyes on it. I paired it with diamond drop earrings, a stark contrast to the fraudulent emerald ring currently sitting on Sienna's finger. My hair was styled in a sleek, sophisticated updo, and my makeup was flawless. A mask of cold, untouchable power. Securing access to the vineyard had been surprisingly simple. A quick mention to the estate management of a pending corporate cybersecurity contract was all it took. I was immediately granted VIP access, ensuring Julian would never see it coming. At exactly 6 p.m, my private car pulled into the Napa Valley estate. The setting sun cast long golden shadows across the rolling hills of grapevines, illuminating the massive, sleek stone manor at the center of the property. The gala was in full swing. Soft classical music drifted from the outdoor terraces. Mingling with the clinking of champagne glasses, I stepped out of the car. The cool evening breeze catching the silk of my gown, Vance emerged from the shadows near the security checkpoint. Dressed in a sharp tuxedo, he handed me a small, discreet earpiece. "The audio feed is live," Vance murmured. "I have hacked into the vineyard's massive outdoor projection mapping system. You have full override control from your phone whenever you are ready." "Thank you, Vance," I said, slipping the earpiece in. "Where are the targets?" "The in-laws are holding court near the wine-tasting pavilion. Julian and Sienna are currently mingling on the main terrace. He is preparing to make a toast in approximately 20 minutes. I nodded, my pulse steady and calm. This was the moment of execution. I walked past the security checkpoint, flashing my VIP credentials. I bypassed the main celebration area, moving swiftly and silently up the sweeping stone staircase to an exclusive Juliet balcony that overlooked the entire courtyard. From my vantage point, I had a perfect, unobstructed view of the carnage about to unfold. I saw Eleanor and Richard laughing with a group of logistics investors. I saw Sienna wearing a white silk slip dress, clutching Julian's arm as if he were a lottery ticket. And I saw Julian, smiling his arrogant, narcissistic smile, completely unaware that his entire world was about to be reduced to ash. I pulled my phone from my clutch. Opening the override application Vance had installed, I synced my device to the massive outdoor projection mapping system designed to illuminate the side of the stone manor. I loaded the first slide of my presentation. It was not a slide about logistics synergy. It was a high-resolution image of Sienna fraudulent expense reports. The trap was fully armed. Julian grabbed a microphone from the sound engineer and tapped it twice. The sharp thud echoed across the courtyard, silencing the crowd. He stepped up onto a small, elevated stone platform, pulling Sienna up beside him. I took a slow, deep breath, letting the cold, calculating power of the moment fill my lungs. The financial ghost was gone. The apex predator had arrived. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Julian began, his voice projecting across the vineyard. "I look out at this incredible group of people, our visionary investors, and my wonderful parents, and I am reminded of how far we have come. The logistics industry teaches us that sometimes you have to disrupt the established system to achieve true innovation. Sometimes you have to take a massive risk, break away from the old models, and build something entirely new. For a long time, I was playing it safe," Julian continued, his tone shifting into a fabricated vulnerability that made my skin crawl. I was suffocating in a lifeless, dead-end marriage with someone who fundamentally did not understand my drive, my vision, or my potential. It was a partnership on paper only, devoid of passion and completely empty of any real future. A sympathetic murmur rippled through the crowd. I stood motionless on the stone balcony above them. But then I found my true partner, Julian said. Turning to look deeply into Sienna's eyes, I found a woman who matches my ambition. Sienna. Thank you for showing me what genuine love looks like. Here is to our bright future. He raised his glass. The crowd erupted into enthusiastic applause. The senior executives cheered. Eleanor rushed forward to embrace Sienna. I did not use the application on my phone. I simply raised my hand and caught the eye of the head sound engineer standing near the mixing console. I had wired $10,000 to his offshore account earlier that morning. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. The applause was still ringing through the night air when the audio feed died. It was a brutal, instantaneous severing of all sound. The orchestra microphones went dead. The ambient background music vanished. A split second later, the master lighting rig was killed. The warm, flattering amber glow that had bathed the terrace was extinguished, plunging the celebration into a sudden, disorienting darkness. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. I gripped the heavy steel microphone the sound engineer had discreetly left on the railing for me. I ran my thumb over the activation switch. Suddenly, a single, blinding high-intensity spotlight snapped on. It cut through the darkness, bypassing the crowd completely and illuminating me on the balcony. The beam of light caught the shimmering silk of my crimson gown and the cold, unyielding diamonds at my ears. I stood there, a towering, terrifying vision of retribution, looking down upon the silent, stunned masses. I flicked the microphone switch. The speakers cracked to life with a deafening metallic pop. I am afraid it is not a technical glitch. Julian, I said. My voice thundered across the vineyard, down on the main terrace. The color drained from Julian's face so rapidly, he looked as though he had been physically struck. His mouth fell open. The glass of scotch slipped from his fingers, shattering against the flagstone in a spray of amber liquid and crystal shards. Sienna stumbled backward, her hands flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with a primal, suffocating terror. She stared up at me, the woman she had mocked in the break room. Eleanor let out a sharp, strangled noise, clutching Richard's arm for support. I smiled warmly at the sea of upturned faces. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Victoria. I am a senior vice president of cyber forensics. I am also the woman Julian has been legally married to for the past 7 years. I let that statement hang in the crisp night air. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Venture capitalists exchanged alarmed glances. I looked down at Sienna. Her white silk dress suddenly looked like a cheap costume. She was trembling, shaking her head in denial. I tapped my phone screen, activating the secondary phase of the override application. The massive projection mapping system flared to life, illuminating the entire side of the stone manor. It did not display a romantic photo montage. Instead, the stone walls were bathed in the stark, undeniable formatting of corporate auditing spreadsheets. Look closely at the projections behind you, I instructed the crowd, my voice echoing with terrifying authority. What you are seeing is not a celebration of love. It is a documented ledger of corporate theft. I directed my gaze entirely to the trembling 23-year-old standing next to my husband. Sienna, I said smoothly. We had a fascinating conversation in my office yesterday regarding the public relations budget. The projections shifted, displaying high-resolution images of fake vendor invoices perfectly aligned next to banking routing hashes. These invoices represent $50,000 in stolen corporate funds, I announced. I pressed another button. The screen zoomed in, highlighting the routing hashes. The routing hashes on these fake invoices match the exact payroll direct deposit account of the junior PR coordinator standing before you. The crowd erupted into chaotic whispers. Investors, who had just clinked glasses with Sienna, now took physical steps away from her, treating her like a radioactive liability. Sienna fell to her knees on the stone terrace, her hands covering her face, her shoulders heaving with violent craze. Racking sobs. The glittering emerald engagement ring on her finger caught the light of the projections, a cruel reminder of her greed. I leaned over the stone balcony, my voice radiating absolute freezing corporate power. Sienna, as your vice president, I am informing you that you are officially fired for corporate theft, effective immediately. The Human Resources Department has already cleared your cubicle. Furthermore, the corporate legal team has transferred your downloaded server logs directly to the local police department. You are not going on a honeymoon in Napa Valley. You are going to a holding cell. Sienna wailed. A primal, ugly sound that shattered the remaining shreds of her false dignity. She reached out, grabbing the hem of Julian's tuxedo jacket, begging him to save her. But Julian simply stood there, paralyzed, his eyes locked on the projection screens displaying the undeniable proof of his mistress' crimes. I turned my attention back to my husband. Julian, I said, my voice echoing across the silent vineyard, let us talk about how you financed this spectacular evening. You see, everyone standing on this terrace was under the impression that you are a highly successful executive director. They believed you were a man of immense wealth. But numbers never lie. I tapped my phone screen one final time. The massive projections shifted away from Sienna amateurish invoices. In their place, a complex, staggering network of corporate financial routing appeared. I walked the captive audience of elite investors and senior logistics executives through his exact methodology. I explained how he had routed hundreds of thousands of dollars through a phantom entity called Zenith Solutions via smurfing. I pointed to the dates, the offshore intermediary accounts, and the final deposits. The reaction from the crowd was instantaneous and brutal. The venture capitalists backed away in sheer horror. The senior executives from his logistics firm stared at the screens with a mix of absolute rage and professional panic. They were watching their own corporate capital being drained in real time. Projected on a 50-foot stone wall, you did not pay for that luxury penthouse. Julian, I announced, projecting my voice so every single guest could hear the depth of his fraud. You did not pay for this vineyard gala. You did not even pay for the emerald ring, currently sitting on the finger of your unemployed mistress. You stole every single cent from the supply chain accounts you were trusted to manage. You treated your publicly traded company like a personal slush fund to finance an illusion. Julian finally found his voice. A desperate stemme. Victoria. Please. He begged, holding his hands up toward the balcony. Stop. I can explain everything. We can fix this. I understand exactly what I am doing. I replied, my voice dropping into a chilling register of absolute finality. I am balancing the ledger. I forwarded your little accounting tricks to your CEO yesterday morning. I sent the complete unredacted digital forensics file directly to his personal inbox. The color drained entirely from Julian's face. He looked frantically toward the group of executives from his firm into Deccan, searching for a lifeline. They turned their backs on him. Sienna, still kneeling on the terrace, stopped sobbing. She slowly raised her head, looking up at the projections, staring at the flow of embezzled money. She looked at the furious executives. Then she looked at Julian. The delusion she had been living was instantly shattered. You are broke, Sienna whispered, her voice carrying in the quiet night air. Her realization quickly morphed into visceral. Unhinged fury. She scrambled to her feet. You lied to me. Sienna. Listen to me, Julian pleaded, reaching out to grab her arms. I can fix this. I have assets. I have the commercial property. You have absolutely nothing. She screamed at the top of her lungs, with a vicious, lightning-fast motion. Sienna swung her arm and slapped Julian squarely across the face. The sharp, resounding crack echoed across the entire vineyard. He stumbled backward, clutching his jaw in stunned silence. At that exact moment, a low mechanical hum vibrated through the gravel driveway of the estate. The night was illuminated by a blinding, chaotic wash of flashing red and blue lights. The glare reflected off the stone walls in aggressive strokes of emergency colors. Sirens chirped briefly, sharp and authoritative, cutting through Sienna's hysterical screaming. For dark, unmarked tactical vehicles were parked directly at the base of the terrace. The doors swung open simultaneously. A dozen federal agents wearing dark tactical jackets with the letters FBI emblazoned in bold yellow across their backs marched in perfect synchronized formation down the stone steps. The elite guests parted like the Red Sea. No one wanted to be anywhere near the blast zone. The lead federal agent strode directly onto the main terrace. Julian froze. He looked at the flashing red and blue lights, then at the federal agents swarming the terrace, and finally up at me standing on the stone balcony. His eyes were completely hollow. Julian, the lead agent announced, his voice booming with legal authority. You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, and grand larceny. Two agents flanked him immediately. They grabbed his arms, forcing them behind his back. The sharp metallic click of steel handcuffs ratcheting shut around his wrists cut through the heavy silence of the crowd. He did not fight. He simply went limp. A broken, humiliated man stripped of his power, his wealth, and his freedom. I stood on the balcony, my posture immaculate, watching the federal agents march my husband off the luxury terrace in handcuffs. Eleanor collapsed against Richard, burying her face in her hands as she watched her golden boy shoved into the back of an unmarked federal vehicle. I had promised him absolute legal and financial annihilation. I always deliver on my promises. As the unmarked police vehicles pulled away from the vineyard, the heavy silence left in their wake was absolute. On the main terrace, the guests stood frozen in shock. No one spoke a single word. I turned away from the stone balcony, my expression an impenetrable mask of calm. I walked directly down the sweeping stone staircase. The wealthy crowd parted instantly. As my feet touched the flagstone, the spell broke. You monster! Eleanor lunged through the crowd, her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. Richard was right behind her, his face flushed, a dangerous purple. They charged at me, completely ignoring the high society decorum they usually worshipped. You planned this, Eleanor screamed, stopping just inches from my face. You set him up. You deliberately ruined my son. You destroyed our family name. Richard pointed a trembling finger at my face. We knew you were absolute trash the moment he brought you home. He spat. You orchestrated this entire spectacle to steal his money. I will spend every dime suing you into the ground. I will leave you with nothing. I did not flinch. I looked at the two of them, these pathetic architects of their own misery, and allowed a cold smile to grace my lips. You are going to sue me, I asked effortlessly, cutting through their rage. With what money? The money Julian stole, or the money you borrowed to fund this pathetic illusion? Eleanor gasped, taking a sudden step back. How do you know about that? I know everything. Eleanor, I replied, I know Julian embezzled corporate funds. I know he forged my signature for a secondary commercial lien. And I know you and Richard took out a high-risk mezzanine loan for $400,000 to finance this vineyard gala. Richard's jaw clenched. That is none of your business. Our assets are secure. Your assets were secure. I corrected him gently. Until you signed the deed to your equestrian estate over as collateral, I slowly opened my designer clutch. The crowd had edged closer. Watching the destruction with morbid fascination, I reached inside and slowly withdrew a folded stack of legal documents. I held the documents up. I saw the exact moment Richard recognized the lending firm's bold logo. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked as though he might collapse. When you deal with predatory lenders, Richard, they have the right to sell your debt portfolio to the highest bidder. I explained, they do not care about your pedigree. They care about liquidity. And when an anonymous offshore holding company offered them the principal balance, plus a premium in cash, they sold your loan without a second thought. I took a step forward, closing the distance between myself and my mother-in-law. I held her panicked, terrified gaze. I bought your debt. Eleanor, I said, my voice ringing out with absolute, undeniable authority. Your equestrian estate belongs to my LLC now. You have until Monday at 8 in the morning to vacate my property. I opened my hand and let the foreclosure documents drop. They hit the polished flagstone right at Eleanor, expensive shoes with a satisfying heavy thud. Eleanor stared down at the papers, her breath coming in short gasps. She looked back up at me, her eyes wide with total comprehension. The arrogance, the elitism, the smug superiority she had weaponized against me for 7 years vanished instantly. She was looking at the woman who had just rendered her homeless. You cannot do this, she whispered, her voice cracking. Where will we go? We have nothing. You have exactly what you earned. I replied coldly. You endorsed a thief. You welcomed a parasite. You tried to leave me with nothing. Now you get to experience the reality you designed for me. I turned my back on them. I did not wait for Richard to shout another empty threat. Their pathetic misery was no longer my concern. My ledger was perfectly and forever balanced. I walked away, heading straight toward the estate gates. The crowd of elites parted from me one last time, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and profound respect. I descended the stone pathway, my heels striking the gravel with steady confidence. The cool night air of the vineyard hit my face, carrying the scent of crushed grapes and absolute freedom. As my shoes touched the asphalt of the parking area, I looked toward the edge of the lot. Parked under the dim glow of a security light was a sleek black sedan, standing leaning against the driver's side door, holding a lit cigar. Was David. He had not attended the gala. He had not participated in the toxic spectacle. He had simply waited in the shadows to watch the empire fall. I stopped walking for a brief moment. I looked at David across the distance. We did not need to speak. We did not need to exchange pleasantries or recap the carnage I had just inflicted. He looked at the flashing lights of the distant police cruisers, then looked at me standing tall in my crimson gown. David took the cigar from his mouth. He gave me a slow, respectful nod. It was an acknowledgement between the only two people who had ever seen this family for what they truly were. I slowly nodded back. David opened his car door, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The headlights swept across the dark asphalt as he pulled out of the vineyard, officially washing his hands of his toxic in-laws forever. I turned my head and walked calmly toward my own waiting car. The financial and social execution was now officially complete. 6 months passed. The passage of time is a ruthless auditor balancing the ledgers of our choices with absolute precision. For Julian, the audit concluded in a cold, Windowless federal courtroom. The evidence I had meticulously compiled was so overwhelmingly thorough that his high-priced defense attorneys practically begged him to take a plea deal. He is currently serving an 84-month sentence in a federal correctional institution. He traded his tailored suits for standard-issue khaki uniforms. The man who once stood on a luxury terrace holding a glass of scotch and bragging about his visionary brilliance now spends his days working in the prison kitchen facility for pennies an hour. He has no logistics partnerships to leverage. He has no offshore assets to hide. He is entirely stripped of the arrogant facade he used to navigate the world. Every night, he sleeps on a thin mattress surrounded by the crushing reality of his own monumental stupidity. Sienna fared no better in the aftermath. The corporate theft charges effectively vaporized her career before it even truly began. While she managed to avoid a lengthy prison sentence by cooperating fully with the federal authorities against Julian, her financial and social ruin was absolute. I made sure the circumstances of her termination were meticulously documented in the primary industry databases. She is entirely unhireable in the corporate sector. Any basic background check flags her immediately for embezzlement and fraud. She currently works at a massive retail warehouse on the outskirts of the city, living with 3 roommates in a cramped apartment just to afford her crushing legal fees. The $50,000 emerald ring she flaunted so eagerly was seized by the federal government as an asset purchased with stolen funds. Her grand illusion of a wealthy, pampered lifestyle evaporated the exact moment the police lights hit her face on that stone terrace. Eleanor and Richard experienced the brutal reality of the free market they always claimed to champion. True to my word, my offshore holding company initiated aggressive foreclosure proceedings at exactly 8 in the morning that following Monday. They tried to fight it, hiring desperate lawyers who filed frivolous motions. But predatory commercial loans offer no sanctuary. They were formally evicted from their sprawling equestrian estate just before the holidays. The equestrian club quietly revoked their membership to avoid the stench of the ongoing federal investigation. Their wealthy friends, terrified of the scandal surrounding their son, stopped returning their calls entirely. They now live in a cramped 2-bedroom rental condo in a highly undesirable neighborhood near the industrial district. There are no manicured horse pastures. There are no elegant Sunday brunches. There is only the suffocating reality of their own hubris. In their desperation, they repeatedly attempted to cross the boundaries I had established. The mailbox at my corporate office became a dumping ground for their pathetic pleas. I received letters from Julian, written on cheap prison stationery, begging for my forgiveness, swearing that he had changed, and asking if I would be willing to put funds in his commissary account. Eleanor left frantic, tearful voicemails on my old phone number, crying about how small her new condo was and pleading for me to show some grace to family. I never listened to the voicemails. I never read past the first lines of the letters. I simply fed the prison correspondence directly into my heavy-duty paper shredder and watched Julian pathetic apologies turn into unreadable confetti. I changed my personal phone number, updated my corporate security protocols to permanently ban Eleanor and Richard from the premises, and established an impenetrable wall of absolute silence. They were completely dead to me. Giving them a response, even a negative one, would be giving them a piece of my energy. Total suffocating silence was the ultimate punishment. It forced them to sit alone with their failures. While they sank into permanent obscurity, my trajectory skyrocketed. The flawless execution of the cyber audit that uncovered Sienna fraud, combined with my impeccable management of our department's risk mitigation, caught the undivided attention of the global board of directors. 3 months ago, I was officially promoted to Chief Information Security Officer. I command a massive division of elite digital analysts. I negotiate international data security protocols. I am no longer just climbing the corporate ladder. I am the one deciding exactly where the ladder is placed. With my promotion and the absolute security of my protected offshore wealth, I purchased a new sanctuary. I am currently sitting on the sweeping cantilevered balcony of my modernist architectural mansion. Overlooking a breathtaking coastal cliffside, the evening air is perfectly crisp. The ocean crashes below me. A sprawling network of raw, limitless potential. I hold a crystal glass of exquisite red wine, savoring the complex, robust flavor. There is no one here to ask me to compromise my ambition. There is no one here to drain my resources or demand my submission. There is only peace, absolute and unfiltered. Looking out over the dark water, I realize something fundamental about betrayal. When someone tries to destroy you, society often tells you to take the high road. They tell you to forgive, to let the universe handle the rest, to quietly walk away and heal. But when a parasite tries to consume your life, simply walking away leaves the parasite alive to strike again. I chose a different path. I chose the path of total, calculated eradication. I did not just survive my husband's infidelity and financial abuse, I weaponized it. I turned his arrogance into the very instrument of his downfall. I used my intellect, my resources, and my absolute refusal to be a victim to reclaim every single thing that belonged to me. Living beautifully, successfully, and ruthlessly on your own terms is not just a recovery strategy. It is the ultimate revenge. You do not have to forgive those who tried to bury you. You simply have to become the architect of a life so brilliantly successful that their betrayal becomes nothing more than a minor footnote in your history of triumph. Have you ever had to legally and financially outsmart someone who tried to ruin you? Tell me your story in the comments. The narrative of Victoria's methodical dismantling of her husband's deceptive life serves as a masterclass in the power of strategic emotional detachment. When confronted with life-altering betrayal, the natural human instinct is to react with immediate, explosive confrontation. However, this story powerfully illustrates that yielding to raw anger often compromises one's leverage. By choosing to suppress her immediate emotional devastation, Victoria transformed her heartbreak into cold, actionable intelligence. She did not scream. She audited. She did not beg for an explanation. She secured her assets. This approach underscores a vital life lesson in moments of profound crisis. Clarity is your greatest weapon. Deception thrives on the victim's panic and confusion. By maintaining absolute composure, one can systematically assess the situation, map out the adversary vulnerabilities, and build a fortress around one's own future. Victoria's deep cybersecurity and financial literacy allowed her to trace the embezzled funds, identify the fraudulent commercial lien, and establish an impenetrable offshore trust. Her story highlights that emotional independence must be actively coupled with financial independence. You cannot effectively defend yourself if you do not understand the very systems, accounts, and resources that sustain your life. Furthermore, the narrative challenges the societal expectation that victims must seek closure through mediation or traditional forgiveness. Sometimes the healthiest and most restorative response to malicious exploitation is the complete and utter revocation of access to your life. Executed with flawless legal and financial precision, justice is not always handed down passively by fate. Sometimes it must be carefully architected. True empowerment comes not from merely surviving the fire, but from learning how to control the burn to clear a bright, unencumbered path forward. Take a moment today to review your own digital and financial security. Educate yourself on your legal rights and ensure you hold the keys to your own independence.